up until this year, there had been a fair degree of unity within the peace forces, at least in Canada, about the situation with Iran. There had been many statements made from different organizations, up to and including the Canadian Peace Alliance, which is the country's largest peace organization. And those statements went along the lines of wanting to counter, expressing concern about the danger of war against Iran, particularly by the U.S., and expressing a desire and making a call to people to block those aims. And at that time, George W. Bush was the U.S. president. He had listed Iran on the axis of evil, the so-called axis of evil. There was a lot of saber rattling. And he was very aggressively promoting isolation of Iran in the international community under the pretense of halting a nuclear program, and Nima mentioned that. So without identifying Ahmadinejad as either a liberator or a tyrant, there was the remarks, the position of the United States allowed for a basis of unity, a fairly broad basis of unity. And this is important right now because that situation is different. It's in fact the response of the United States and other imperialist countries, with right-wing governments, I might add, the response of those governments to the election and the aftermath in Iran has distorted, I think, in many ways, the response that needs to be coming from the peace movement. And I want to be careful to not overgeneralize. I mean, there's lots of peace activists who are doing lots of good work, but there are some issues. And I think there's two reasons for those problems. One is and maybe the biggest one is the election in the United States. There's a president there now who has taken some very significant departures from previous U.S. foreign policy, and notably from those policies of the George W. Bush regime. That doesn't change the fact that the United States is an imperialist state, and it's going to frame its foreign policy consistent with the aims of imperialism. Those specific strategies will move around as it locates different openings, but an election of one individual doesn't change the nature of that state. So that's one issue. And the other issue is, and Nima mentioned this, so I'm not going to go on about it, but is the optics and the realities of the Iranian election itself. But what's important for the purpose of my remarks is that it's the aftermath of that election and the response in particular of the United States, which has, I think, muddled the waters for the peace movement, or for elements of the peace movement, to find a clear response. And to put it very bluntly, there are a number of progressive individuals and organizations who have come out very forcefully supporting Ahmadinejad, declaring congratulations for his election, his re-election, in their words. They've adopted the position that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and I think that's being applied in a very, not just a mechanical way, but an absolutely sad manner, and a very weak manner. People look to the anti-U.S. rhetoric and the anti-Zionist rhetoric that's come out of Ahmadinejad, and not seeing that same rhetoric from Mousavi, they make an assumption that Mousavi is standing in the corner, or a patsy, I guess, of imperialism. Maybe that wasn't a good word to use, but similarly, when we see governments like that of Hugo Chavez come out and make a congratulations, and again, I'm glad that Nima commented on that, but when we see that, there's similarly, it fuels a knee-jerk reaction. Now, I support Hugo Chavez, and the Canadian Peace Congress is in deep solidarity with the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela. And I'm sure there's things that Hugo Chavez knows that, well, I know there's lots of things that Hugo Chavez knows that I don't know, and that's fine. But when it comes to assessing the validity of the struggle in Iran, I'm going to focus my attention on anti-imperialists who are in Iran and who are from Iran. And those folks are represented here by Nima. And there's just no question in my mind that this struggle is valid and needs to be supported and needs to be defended. A position that has been taken that Mousavi represents an imperialist current is foolish and problematic and dangerous. as this situation in Iran plays out, we need to root our response in an analysis of the larger context, and that is one that the United States is an imperialist state, and as I mentioned earlier, it's going to conduct its foreign policy, well, with a lot of differences strategically. It's going to conduct it in a way that's consistent with the aims of imperialism. Imperialism has sought for decades to regain control over Iran and its resources, and it's enormously strategically important. And that's going to continue regardless of whether the characters are Bush or Obama or Ahmadinejad or Mousavi. Again, those specific strategies will change, but we need to keep our eye on that general picture and that general thrust. The danger of war in Iran remains very high. As I said, imperialism will always seek whatever opening it can get to enter into a country and subvert a process and achieve control over that, and we need to eyeball that. I think to close, I will mention first a quote from Piran Azad. He's speaking, I think, to activists around the world, and he sort of poses this statement in a question form, I guess. He says, if we don't just focus on what happens at the top, the world powers and the Iranian ruling machinery, but we rely on below and not forget our role as active interventionists, as subjects who form the process of class struggle, then we may find our place in the ways to paralyze the imperialist intervention and run our fight against capitalist social relationship. That, I think, encapsulates what we need to be thinking about, that we need to confront in those elements of the peace movement and the solidarity movements who feel hamstrung because of the response from the United States, who feel that whose analysis is distorted as a result. We need to confront that and convince them that it is important to A, support in a solidaristic way, support the movement of people in Iran, and B, to block imperialist intervention in that region. Full stop. The position of the World Peace Council in a year ago, which was obviously before these elections, but it's consistent, on Iran was, I'll paraphrase here because I don't have the full text in front of me, but was to offer solidarity with Iran in its struggle against imperialist intervention. Remember, this is during the Bush years. This is not because we like the government of Ahmadinejad, but because we understood the dynamics of U.S. imperialism and the desire of U.S. imperialism to saber rattle and get in there. 2 was to support the Iranian people in their struggle for human rights, for democracy, for self-determination, for social progress. That remains the same, and that compels us to step up and speak up about the current situation. And the third component of World Peace Council, and therefore Canadian Peace Congress policy in the region, Middle East and Asia region, was to call for an end to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, to end Israel's occupation of Palestine and the apartheid system there, to dismantle Israel's nuclear armaments, and to end the isolation and aggressiveness towards Syria as well. It's all part of a coherent and comprehensive approach to the region, and that shouldn't be parceled off because certainly imperialism has a comprehensive approach to that region, and they're not parceling off components. They are maintaining a comprehensive view of this situation. So I've shortened my remarks, and I hope that's okay. I look forward to a good discussion. Thanks very much.